Good morning, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with a severe weather outlook and discussion recorded on April 20th, 2023, recorded on 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We have a lot to go over today, including more severe weather potential. So, jumping straight into everything, taking a wide look across the satellite imagery this morning for the United States, we notice that we have an area of low pressure that is developing out across portions of Nebraska into southern South Dakota and Iowa. This will be ejecting off towards the north and east over the next couple of hours, bringing with it a trailing cold front and associated shower and thunderstorm activity with it across a wide swath of the South and Midwest today. So taking a look here at the severe weather threat, this is valid as of 10 a.m. this morning. We have a slight risk for severe storms from San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, Houston, Shreveport, Little Rock, and further to the north. We'll talk about the northern mode here in just a second, with a level 1 out of 5 marginal risk from near New Orleans towards about Laplace through near Memphis, Tennessee, Springfield, Fayetteville, and back through Dallas and southeastern Oklahoma. Tornado threat today is going to be limited 2% area from San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, Shreveport, back through about Little Rock and extreme southern Missouri. 15% for the wind threat in that slight risk area, and hail probability as well. Could see some significant hail even down here in the southern mode with any more discrete cells. The further south of the line you get, you could see some hail that tops out over 2 inches in diameter, so some pretty significant hail chances there. Now, jumping to the northern mode, we also have a severe weather threat today out across portions of Illinois. We have a level 2 out of 5 slight risk from near St. Louis, Champaign, Peoria, and just to the south and west of Chicago, Illinois. And this is mainly going to be driven by the fact that we have a cold front that is going to be approaching from the west. And with that, you're going to see widespread showers and thunderstorms developing along this line. The moisture quality today is going to be pretty strong, especially the further south you get into more of that tropical air. The warm front pretty far to the north into portions of southern Wisconsin and into portions of western and southwestern Michigan. The instability values across this area are going to be pretty strong, especially the further closer to that line you get. Now, the further east you get, that instability will increase later in the day, but the overall severe weather threat is going to be tempered by the fact that instability is going to be limited. And the shear profiles in this area as well are going to be the strongest the further north you get. So there is a small tornado threat in this area, just a 2% area through here, because again, the overall convective mode seems to be more linear, but damaging winds and large hail seem to be the primary threat with this mode. But we'll have to watch for any line-embedded storms, supercells, or maybe even a few discrete cells. Generally speaking, though, the shear is going to be maximized further towards the north, closer to that warm front. So any storms that do move into this environment through here will need to be watched extra carefully for the potential for a few isolated tornadoes. Now, further south along this line, there is going to be stronger forcing of ascent. This is going to be a cold front that is going to be sliding south and east, and that is going to be increasing the lift across the area. So you're going to have some pretty strong lifting ongoing across this entire area today, and that is mainly attributed to the cold front. Now, the further south you get, the lifting will be a little bit less tempered, and so there will be a threat for some isolated discrete supercells to form initially before this whole convective mass catches up and becomes more of a linear mode anyway. But overall, the shear profiles down here are just not as impressive. In fact, there's only modest shear, about 100 to 150 meters squared per second squared across this area, which means that there is just enough for potential transient supercells and supercell embedded structures within any line segments. But overall, the main threat is going to be for some very large hail down in this area. And what we're actually finding is that large hail, to get significant large hail, you need less vertical shear. And so I think this is probably going to be where your better overlap of less vertical shear but higher instability is going to be across this area. And so any supercells that do form down here will have the initial threat for some very large hail over 2 inches in diameter. And of course, that shear is virtually non-existent the further east and southeast you go. So looking at the HRRR 12Z forecast, we notice that again, you kind of see that these initial cells that try to get going with that initial convection out across portions of the Midwest, Iowa, and Illinois, those will kind of dissipate and lead to more isolated cellular development closer to this area of low pressure down here. And then you kind of have these more transient line segments in here that end up producing more of a damaging wind threat. But again, any supercells that form, especially in this northern mode, will have a threat for some tornadoes today. Very conditional risk, but that risk is still there nonetheless. And then we have a trailing cold front with associated damaging wind, large hail threat down to the south. And so this will all be over by sometime very late tonight. Again, multiple rounds of strong, potentially severe storms are possible. That could lead to some flooding concerns across this area. But eventually that kind of will clear out. Another round of storms possible tomorrow. These are going to be in the cooler air, so the severe weather threat is going to be less up here. But there is still a threat for some severe storms tomorrow, especially near the Gulf Coast states. And that's going to be as this line drifts towards the southeast. Only a marginal risk out for tomorrow. And then this storm system continues to move towards the east, and we'll be watching that on Saturday for potential severe storms in this area from the central Florida Peninsula all the way through portions of North Carolina and even Virginia, as a fast-moving squall line impacts the northern mode and potential more cellular multi-cell development down here across the south with attendant large hail and damaging wind threat. So, of course, last night we also had some pretty significant severe weather out across near the Oklahoma City, Norman area. We actually had one very strong supercell. This was from last night. Very strong supercell. Here is Norman, Oklahoma right here. So, not too far away from the National Weather Center and Storm Prediction Center office buildings. But you notice that, again, very strong signature of that hook echo. And we talked about this last night. That really any storm that gets going in this area is going to have the threat to produce strong to potentially violent tornadoes. Very, very tight signature here on the velocity. And notice there is a little drop here in the CC values indicating that we had debris being lofted as this thing approached Cole, Oklahoma. And of course, we know what happened if you watched any of the streams from Reed Timmer or any of the other chasers who are out there. Very deviant tornado motion as well, which means that it was very difficult to chase because this tornado actually occluded, and instead of moving with the storm to the southeast, it actually hooked up and moved towards the northwest. So you got to watch these deviant tornado motions whenever you're chasing, because they can and oftentimes will separate from the parent supercell and take more of that turn. And I suggest you watch Cameron Nixon's video about how you can, decipher that from the hodograph. But very difficult chasing conditions across this area, and luckily I've not heard of any chasers that have been hit by any of this deviant tornado motion. So good job to all the chasers out there for being safe. All right. So that being said, again, we'll be kind of watching what happens. This is just another view of the supercell from last night. Very crazy that this storm actually did what it did. Dropped a lot of tornadoes, that is for sure. So we'll be watching what happens over the course of the next several hours today. Of course, the biggest threat is going to be probably across this northern mode for discrete supercells, but can't rule out a few down here in the south as well. So with that being said, be safe, everyone. Have a great rest of your afternoon and evening. I'll probably be back with another video discussion sometime later this evening. Otherwise, take care, God bless, and I'll talk to you more later.